It is my belief that there is a kind of revolution happening, particularly in West Africa right now. And a major development of this revolution has happened this week. I'm sure many of you out there know the impact that France has on the continent of Africa right now in a negative way. I go as far as to say it is a neocolonial system of control that France attempts to enact upon all of its ex-colonies. But of course, in the last few years, we've seen the rise of Ibrahim Traoré and several other similar young, vibrant leaders that have decided to move away from the system that the French set up after the colonial times ended. One such president is President Bassirou Diomaye Faye. In this video, we're going to talk about what he's done, including a 5-step chess game that has totally outmaneuvered President Macron of France. And we're going to talk about the positive impact this will have on Senegal, West Africa, and Africa as a whole, and the negative impact, particularly on the economy of France, as they lose their grip on this new generation of leadership. If you like the sound of that, stay tuned. For those of you that don't know, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed. This channel, we talk about African geopolitics. And the reason that I talk about African geopolitics is because I currently live in the continent of Africa. Although I grew up mostly in the UK, I was educated in the UK, and I had a career in the UK, I decided to make a change and look for something new in life. So now I'm here on the continent. One of the things that frustrates me to no end is the fact that Africa is not living up to its full potential. So when I see positive things happening for the people of the continent, I try and talk about it here on this channel. Now, when I first came across Faye, the president of Senegal, I was a little bit skeptical about him. For example, I watched the Olympics that was held in Paris not too long ago, and I saw all the dignitaries arriving to greet Macron at the Olympics. And Faye was one of them. Even though he had 2 wives, he came with one. I'm sure that was to manage the European press and the way they would talk about him if he showed up with 2 wives. And he cozied up to Macron. He smiled, he shook hands. And I wondered, is this guy for Africa or is this guy for France? For far too long, we've seen puppet presidents, and there's still some in place, many who I talk about in this channel. But if Faye is a puppet of France, it would be quite devastating. Why? Because he's only 44 years old. It would represent France's claws in the hands of the new generation of leadership in Africa. But this week, my opinion on Faye has turned fundamentally. I went from not sure to more or less believing that he is a good force for the continent of Africa. So I did some research and I put all of what I found in a document, and I asked AI to help me organize those words. And then I went further than that to create an audio visualization of these words, just to help me communicate my points as clearly as possible. Let's take a look at it. Here is the timeline of what happened. On November 29th, 2024, President Faye announced that French troops must leave Senegal. The same day, and this wasn't a coincidence, Chad also kicked out French forces. By March 7th, 2025, France had already handed over 2 military bases to Senegal, the Marichal and Saint-Exupéry facilities. All French troops will be gone by summer 2025. By the way, this is not only the French he's done this to. Everybody else that has a military base, he made the same announcement to. So there will be no foreign military bases in Senegal moving forward. But here's what makes Faye a genius. He didn't just kick France out, he played a 5-move chess game that left Macron with no good options. Move 1, the public humiliation. When Macron tried to save face by claiming the withdrawal was negotiated and that France was just being polite by letting African leaders announce it first, Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko immediately fired back. He called Macron's statement completely wrong in front of the whole world. This wasn't an accident. It was calculated to show everyone that France was lying about being in control. Just to kind of back that up, this is actually an article that is usually in French, but I've used the Google facility to translate it on page. And this is an article that came out at the time, published January 6, 2025. Ousmane Sonko denies the allegations of Emmanuel Macron about withdrawal of the French military. And as you go down here, you'll see his quote. I want to say that in the case of Senegal, this statement is totally wrong. No discussion or negotiation has taken place to date, and the decision taken by Senegal stems from its sole will as a free independent and sovereign country. So this is the real turning point when I felt like Senegal is really starting to actually reject the French.
Move 2. Keep business, lose the gun. Unlike other African countries that cut all ties with France, Faye did something smarter. He said, "We'll still do business with you, but we won't let you keep pointing a gun at our head." This preserved good economic relationships while removing France's military threat. It's like telling a bully, "I'll still talk to you, but you can't bring your big brother anymore."
So the point I'm trying to make here is that all the time while they were planning these moves, they kept communication lines and public appearance and an open situation with France. There are some benefits to that, right? It means that France's attention is not so hot when it's on you. They may not come with the same level of covert fury that they come with maybe a Burkina Faso when the rejection is so thorough. Maybe they feel that there's still a diplomatic path, a negotiating path, and maybe there is. Maybe there is a world where you can negotiate with France so that we get parity when we do our business deals. This is the door that Faye is keeping open. And it remains to be seen if this is a good path or not. Let's not forget, because he's actually taken the step to walk away from France, then he can still align himself with the other AES countries, Ibrahim Traore, etc.
Move 3. Attack the money system. Faye announced plans to dump the CFA Franc by 2030. This targets France's most powerful weapon, their control over African money. Right now, Senegal and 13 other countries must deposit 50% of their foreign reserves in French banks. That's billions of dollars that France uses for free. When Senegal leaves this system, France loses access to that money forever.
So let's just be clear. Removing the military is one step. And as announced, they will also change currencies. And of course, you've got neighbors right next door, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, that have already announced a new AES currency. Essentially, France has been benefiting and enjoying free money without doing any work for it, at the expense of these African countries. I think the world would be much more outraged if they understood that the French actually keep a percentage of the money earned from these countries in their banks, control that money, take that money on the stock market, as well as peg that currency to the euro. Any African country that uses the CFA franc has no autonomy, no ability to change any monetary policy. So if France wants to do something to manipulate the currency of that country, or even manipulate beyond the currency of that country through the money, they can do so. It is one of the most sickening things I got to realize, and it absolutely has to stop. Thankfully, the AES, Ibrahim Traore, Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali are all on this train. And it seems like with this announcement to remove the military and the commitment to go away from the CFA franc by 2030 aligns perfectly with what the AES is doing, because they've announced their own central bank and a single currency that they're trying to roll out right now. So much like Chad, this is giving me the confidence that Senegal is likely to join the AES as well.
Move 4. Perfect timing. Faye waited until other African nations had already expelled French forces. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger had already formed the alliance of Sahel States and kicked France out. By being one of the last to demand withdrawal, Senegal made sure France couldn't isolate them or punish them like they might have done if Senegal acted alone.
Not everybody has to put themselves directly in the fire, right? You're seeing your neighbors go through the fire. Well, they can blaze the trail, but then when the time is right for Senegal, then they can also follow in place. This keeps the political tension down in Senegal, and I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just a smart tactic. Not everyone is going to be a revolutionary like Ibrahim Traore. And it also means that Faye won't necessarily get the accolades and respect that you see Traore having. But also Faye hasn't had any assassination attempts, at least not like Ibrahim Traore.
Move 5. The contract audit. Here's the move that really scared French companies. Faye launched audits that found 480 completely illegal contracts with foreign companies in oil, gas, and mining. This gives Senegal the legal right to cancel unfair deals and renegotiate terms that were clearly designed to steal from the Senegalese people. The economic nuclear bomb. Most people don't understand how devastating this system is for Africa. The numbers are shocking. Countries using the CFA franc have a credit to GDP ratio of only 25%. Compare that to other African countries at 60%. What does this mean in simple terms? It means businesses in CFA countries can barely get loans to grow and create jobs. The currency is pegged to the euro at exactly 655.957 CFA francs to €1. African countries can't change this rate even when it hurts their exports.
The average person doesn't get loans in African countries very easily. A lot of people in Africa save their money to do things like open a business, buy land or whatever. You don't just go to the bank and easily get big loans, right? That's in the best of countries. And what was highlighted here is that these countries that have the CFA franc, their opportunity to get loans is even lower than the African standard, which is already low by world standards. I've spoken about a book called The Mystery of Capital before, and it talks about how the ownership of property and loans are a key factor to the growth of a country to go from developing to developed. There are, of course, many other factors, but I highlight this particular point here. Africa needs good banking, safe banking. It needs the ability to give its people the chance to grow. And an accelerator of that is loans. And it's clear that the CFA franc prevents that situation from happening.
The domino effect. Chad applied to join the alliance of Sahel States right after announcing their break with France. French newspapers are now talking about the end of Françafrique, the system of French control in Africa that has lasted since colonial times. One headline read, "From 10,000 to 2,000 soldiers in 5 years."
That is a massive reduction, right? And that number is going further down. I found this article here that said that the end of Francophone, the second decolonization wave in Africa. So even in Europe, this reporter, her name is Angela Mayer, she reported this in January 2025. Even she's written a whole article highlighting the trend that Africa is rejecting France. This is not just me pulling this idea out of the sky. It is being understood, it is being documented, and I really hope this is a massive blow to the oppressive systems that we've been seeing controlling African countries for years.
France's decline in Africa accelerates. The real stakes. If Senegal successfully breaks from the CFA franc, the economic impact could be massive. GDP growth could jump from 5.7% to 8 to 10% annually by allowing currency adjustments that boost exports. The credit to GDP ratio could double from 25% to 50% within 5 years. An estimated 100,000 new jobs could be created annually through expanded local businesses. Economic projections show Senegal could increase its GDP by up to 30% within a decade.
So what I want to highlight here is that we've already seen GDP job growth in other countries that have gone down this path. It's not a stretch for us to say this. And I try to cobble together some of these projections based off what I've seen online. It's not clear that the numbers will be exactly what I've stated here, but the fact that you can have your own monetary policy and you can do trade deals with your currency in mind, making exports favorable, will in turn create jobs, will in turn boost GDP. We all know that Africa is mineral rich, it's rich in agriculture, it's ready to export. And Senegal is on the coast, making it very easy for things to be shipped over the Atlantic to America, up to the UK, up to other parts of France, without having to traverse through that whole Middle Eastern area that's having all of that conflict and problems right now, pirates, etc. In fact, I've got this map here that I've used in other videos. You've got Mali here in the middle, Burkina Faso, and Niger. That's the current AES. We already know that it's highly likely Chad is going to join. They've already put their application in. I've already made a whole video about that. All of these leaders are young, and the Senegal president right here is likely to join. And like I said, this is access to the coast, much needed access for these landlocked countries.
For France, the losses are equally dramatic. They would lose control over approximately $20 billion in foreign exchange reserves currently sitting in French banks. French companies would lose their competitive advantage in a market of over 120 million people.
What could Africans do with that 20 billion that the French have got for free simply by having this system? What would that mean for African countries if this system was broken? I think that money belongs to the African people. It belongs to the continent of Africa. It shouldn't be bolstering the French economy without getting parity in return.
This isn't just about Senegal, it's about whether Africa can finally break free from a system designed to keep it poor. The World Bank estimates that true monetary independence could reduce poverty rates in countries like Senegal by 15 to 20% over a decade. As one Senegalese economist recently said, you cannot build a house while someone else holds the keys. President Faye understood something that previous African leaders didn't. You don't beat a colonial power by fighting them. You beat them by making their system irrelevant.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we want to see, isn't it? We want to see Faye standing shoulder to shoulder with Ibrahim Traore. We want to see Africans working together. We want to see the de-emphasis of the colonial borders. We want to see a path to prosperity. You can't always be sure, but right now, I for one think Faye is on the right path. He's on the path that I support. Path of independence, a path for the people where you put the people first. While all of these steps have been there to remove themselves from France, understanding what's happening at his border with Mali, with the AES, he's taken the time to go and meet with Traore. And I hope that he understands that being with Traore, being with the people, is of a higher value, not only for the finances of his country, but for the soul of his country. So what do you guys out there think? Have I got it right or have I got it wrong? In your opinion, is Faye a president for the people? If you've got an opinion, if you need to tell me something about that, please leave it in the comments. But if you have nothing to say in the comments, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words West African Revolution in the comment section? It just lets me know that you watched the channel to the end, you like what I'm doing, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you.